Job approval numbers, part 5 tonight. I promised you this morning, and I am delivering it tonight. We are starting in Norman, Oklahoma, because there have been some harsh allegations out there that we have been sort of flying over Oklahoma. We haven't been talking about the Sooners enough. And I did some investigation, and it turns out you're right. We have not talked about Oklahoma enough. This is a tough one. We give letter grades on this. Brent Venables, of course, 1 year in, I like to grade on a curve. Like, I like to give a new guy the benefit of the doubt. But I also have a very mouthy staff here, minus Director Colin, who just minded his own business today. And they wanted me to go really low on Brent Venables. And there's reason for that. I get it. You're looking at the resume there. If you're listening on podcast, let me remind you of the horror that unfolded in Norman. This was the first time this program was under 6 wins since 1998. 98! Great year for a lot of things. It's not a great comparative year when you're going back that far to look at what Oklahoma just duplicated in the year of our Lord 2022. But when Brent Venables got hired, I'm building up to the letter grade. I'm kind of stalling, but I'm building up to the letter grade. When he got hired, I didn't necessarily think that they were going to push for a playoff spot, but what is he known for? Brent Venables is a defensive guy, defensive mastermind. I say that kind of mockingly, but I actually agree with it. The guy had great defenses at Clemson. We also know he had personnel at Clemson better than what he inherited, but I thought to myself, Dylan Gabriel transferred in at quarterback, but, they're going to be really relying on him. But just outside of offense, I said to you in the summer, and I believed it, one area I am pretty sure they're going to improve in is out with Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch, in with Brent Venables. At the very least, they're going to improve defensively, right? Certainly that guy's identity, that guy's thumbprint, will be seen statistically in the defensive profile this year. Nope. Quite the opposite. Last year, points per game, Oklahoma was 58th in the country. It's not good. But they were 98th this year, and that's just flat out bad. Brent Venables is getting a C- for his, I guess, debut season. We're not really grading the season. It just so happens he's only got one under his belt. Now, if you were to do this in year 4, you would be getting an F. So you may say, ooh, that's a little harsh. No, C- isn't harsh. C- is taking into account this guy's a first-year head coach. I happen to look at their recruiting and say, well, there's some cause for not celebration, because that doesn't mean anything, but excitement at least. I certainly think that it was an untenable position. He was put in a really surprisingly difficult position because of the amount of talent that left when Lincoln Riley did. But yet, when we were looking at preseason odds, it's almost like America watched all those good players walk out and say, it doesn't matter, Oklahoma will just win because they're Oklahoma. Well, Oklahoma doesn't win just because they're Oklahoma. They're Oklahoma because they've had good football players for a long time, and they didn't have enough of them this year. Like, that's the long and short of it. They have to get more good football players. And that is why I keep looking at recruiting and keep looking at the transfer portal, and that's a familiar theme. We're going to talk about 1, 2, 3. We're going to talk about 3 first-year guys in this segment tonight. So Brent Venables, C-. I'm going to be pretty interested, especially from Oklahoma fans, to see if you agree, because surprisingly, some of you have been more harsh on your own head coach than I have. And I get it. It's not fun. It's not fun getting blanked by Sark and not necessarily a vintage Texas team. That 3-game losing streak, they also hadn't had one of those this millennium, so that wasn't fun either. Oh, boy. This next one. I should have put it 4th, but I put it 2nd. We do have to do Sam Pittman tonight. I've pushed this as far down the road as I can. So they won 9 games last year. They just went 7-6. And a lot of people are selling on Arkansas. We talked the other night about how many players have left the program. They've had several coaches move on. We call that churn in the industry. It's not necessarily a football industry term, but you get it. I'm going to be disagreed with here, but I'm giving Sam Pittman a B. A little bit of a homer. Yes, I am. But I am going to tell you, or I'm going to ask you, rather, to remember who we're talking about here. This is not Sam Pittman, head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes, where it is their birthright to win double digits per year. That's not the floor in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Getting a lot of snow tonight, by the way. Bundle up out there in northwest Arkansas. I'm giving Sam Pittman a B because I think that I'm pretty well in line with what the historic expectation at Arkansas should be. And they exceeded it last year, and that built up a great big hype balloon. Sadly, some people on this show contributed to it, and I don't want to name names, just certain voices on this solo-hosted show, I hope I'm being pretty clear, contributed to that. And they won 7 games this year. Okay, so let's just put on the table what happened. They won 7 games. They had quarterback injury. They had internal issues. This is excuse making, so bear with me. They had probably the toughest schedule in the country. My point there, as Colin rolls B-roll of the A&M Arkansas game, is this. My point is, if you tell me preseason, with the schedule they're going to play, they're going to have KJ Jefferson go down to injury. They're going to lose a bunch of their defensive players really early in the year. They're playing that schedule, like I said, and also they're going to have not the best internal dynamic. You know what I would have thought? I would have thought they're going to miss a bowl game. I would have thought Arkansas was going to be Texas A&M this year. I thought Arkansas, under those circumstances, was going to be the team that missed bowl season altogether. And somehow they lost to A&M, speaking of the Aggies, and yet still pulled the nose up enough to make a bowl game. Yes, those are excuses, okay? Because the bottom line is whatever dynamic existed there, it ultimately falls in the lap of the head coach, who is Sam Pittman, whose job approval rating we are dishing out tonight. And yes, I mean, it's up to him to be able to replenish a roster and to have enough depth, and that's all well and good. Look, that sounds great. This is the University of Arkansas. So up until about 5 minutes ago, no one would have looked at this program and held it to that standard. They became a prisoner of that standard. They became a prisoner of 2021's results in 2022. Because the fact is, up until this year, no one ever looked at Arkansas winning 7 games, especially with that schedule, and would have said, oh, that's a failure. You wouldn't have, and now you do. So I have to kind of give praise to Sam Pittman because he did elevate the expectation. The problem is they failed to meet it. I am not, however, going to bump him down into the C range over one season. If they stack a bunch of 7-win seasons on top of each other, then I will do that. But I happen to think that 2023 is going to be a better year for them than 2022. This isn't a prediction segment. I'm just saying the head coach at Arkansas is getting more than one 7-win season before I pull the plug on him. Let's go to Miami. This one's really difficult. This is hard. Mario Cristobal. We got to be real about some things. We got to be real about the fact that in no year, under no rebuild project, can you be getting beat 45-31 at home by Middle Tennessee State. You can't be losing 45-21 to first-year head coach Mike Elko and Duke. You inherited Miami. He inherited Duke and beat you. He more than doubled you up. You can't be getting beat 45-3 to Florida State. You can't do that in any year. And I know that Mario Cristobal didn't inherit the best of situations down there. And I have spoken many times, and I will speak it at least one more tonight, about my vision for where I think he'll take that program. But we don't get to grade tonight based on where we think they're going. We're just stuck with where they are right now. So I gave Mario Cristobal C+, and a lot of you are going to think that's way too high. The staff did. But my reason for this is, like I said, with Brent Venables, we grade first-year head coaches on a curve. I'm about to do it with Kalen DeBoer, although I don't need to because he did everything right regardless of whether he's a veteran or not. But also, I happen to believe that probably the situation down there was a little bit worse off than it looked on the surface. And I also think that this was one of those situations. It's not always like this, but sometimes it is like this, where in order to push the right long-term buttons, they had to go backwards in year one. It was just necessary. Now, what I ultimately expect, because of the way they're acquiring talent and the talent they're acquiring, and, let me pause for effect, some staff moves still to come that I don't think have happened yet, I think they'll be fine. Like this year, this upcoming year, I think they'll be fine. So if I were doing a projection segment tonight, I wouldn't necessarily have Cristobal in the C plus category. But we're not doing that tonight. So I have to have him in the C plus category because, like I said, you should be good enough even on the fly to handle Middle Tennessee and Duke at home. You should be good enough to do that regardless. There is never an excuse for that at Miami. So I can't do anything better than a C plus there. Now to go to the great Pacific Northwest and talk about Kalen DeBoer. The highest we can go is A plus. So if I could go A plus plus, I'd do it. But this isn't one of those schools like Bradley went to where they inflate your GPA like 4.5, 5.0. That's not real life. It's not real life. And it's great for you if someone's telling you got a 4.75 GPA. That's not the real world. 4.0 is supposed to be the ceiling. Okay? And I can tell you, I didn't even flirt with that at Harris County High School, but theoretically, if I took care of business in the classroom, I should have been able to acquire 4.0 and no better than 4.0. Kalen DeBoer, A+. He's 4.0 across the board. What could he possibly have done better? He comes to Washington. They're 4-8. He comes to Washington. They're a non-factor. He comes to Washington, and it's not like he came in there and he inherited a bunch of five-star talent that someone had been underachieving with. He inherited a sneaky good roster, but no one looked at Washington and said, there they are, the Georgia Bulldogs of the Northwest, the University of Washington. The only thing those programs had in common was they have canine mascots. That's the beginning and end of it. And Kalen DeBoer goes and just wins 11 games in year one, beats Oregon in year one, and does so with Michael Penix at quarterback. And it's very easy for someone to look at Michael Penix after the season and say, oh, yeah, well, of course Kalen DeBoer won more games. He had Michael Penix. Oh, no. You don't get to do that. You don't get to do that unless you celebrated the acquisition when they got him out of the portal. But no one did, or very few of you did. I didn't. I'm including myself here. I didn't. You know why? Because Michael Penix has been injury-prone his entire career, and he's been a turnover machine his entire career. And when Washington got him, quite frankly, I thought they were bringing him in to add depth, and I thought ultimately one of the other guys up there was going to win the job. That was my first reaction when they brought him in. And instead, listen to this overnight turnaround. In 2021, the University of Washington averaged 21.5 points per game. They were 108th in the country in points per game. 1 year later, they were 7th in America in points per game. They added about 18 points per game on average to their final score from last year to this year. Jesse, what was it you told me? They added something like over 200 yards per game on average offensively. Just insane numbers, so much so that it looks like there should be a red squiggly under a lot of the stats they put up this year. They look like errors. They look like someone else's stats accidentally got copied and pasted over into the Washington spreadsheet. Nope, that's really what Kalen DeBoer did with Michael Penix quarterback in year one. Phenomenal job. Could not possibly think any more highly of what he did up there. And as a result, you look at what he did. You look at what Chip Kelly has started to do, I think really leveraging the portal well at UCLA. You've got Lanning there at Oregon. You got Smith over there at Oregon State. Look up and down the coast in the Pac-12. Look at the quarterback position this year alone in the Pac-12. You know you're going to get a solid product out of Whittingham at Utah. Cam Rising, Jesse's doppelganger's back. You know what you're going to get from Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley at USC. Jed Fish has taken Arizona no place but up. Kenny Dillingham, very interesting acquisition there at Arizona State. The Pac-12 is getting really good, hopefully sustainably good. But this upcoming year, if you want to be ahead of the curve, save the Pac-12 jokes. The ones that you may have accurately been able to use 2 years ago may not necessarily work this upcoming year. So they're already playing better football out there. You could have a really good year for that conference coming up. Such a good year they may cannibalize themselves right in front of God and everyone. They may do that, but it won't be because they're playing inferior football out there for the first time in quite a while.
Thanks for watching, guys. Don't leave yet. Make sure you like the video and please subscribe to the channel. not just for me. That's how we keep this entire thing free.